to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about some stuff that if you just get into wargaming, what you might want to have or want to use for wargaming. Now wargaming is pretty much a simple thing. When you buy the game, almost everything you need is included in here, really. I mean, you could just get this game, read the instructions, read the rules, and then throw the game out there and start playing it. Bust out all the pieces. The dice are in here, the pieces are in there, everything is in there. But many wargamers tend to start collecting war games and start getting other things. Once they play one game, they want to go on to another and another and another. And so there's certain things that help out with your war game. So all these other things that I'm going to talk about, really you don't need to play war games, but they help make your war games look better, your pieces look better, make it easier to play, help you out in some situations. So we'll talk about the things that that you get. Now I'm relatively new. I started last year. Not new, but I mean I did it before many years ago, and then got back into it last year with just 2 games to my name, and now I have probably 75, 80 games now. So one of the things that I would recommend, the first thing you probably want to get is a good pair of tweezers. Now, a lot of people look at the tweezers and say, okay, yeah, these are the kind I'm going to get here with, you know, they're relatively long. I kind of like the ones that have the curved edge that makes it easier to pick up the pieces. The longer ones are better for pulling them out of stuff, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But one of the things that I learned right away is I bought these first and realized that as I was picking up pieces, they were scratching them. They were messing them up. So then I purchased these right here, and these have the coating on them, and I'd recommend that you get those right away. That way you don't mess up your pieces when you push them down and put them back in the trays and stuff. You can scratch them relatively easy with the other ones. These ones sort of protect them and make them stay nice. So now of course the tweezers are used for playing. Now when you go to cut out the pieces, you can just punch them out, but sometimes it helps to have an X-Acto blade, not necessarily needed, but to cut them out, and a nice straight edge. Now the reason I say that is that when you get like the older games and the newer ones, the older games here, they have the pieces that have little nibs on the edges here and also in the corners. The newer games now, they come out where they have the attachment by the corners. So they can be clipped off, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But when you're cutting them out, one of the tools that I really like is this right here. It's a Frisket circle cutter, and it's a nice sharp blade here, and you just roll it right along the edge of the pieces where they're cut out, and it gets all those little nibs in the center out. Now if you can't quite get them, like when you pull them apart, you have this nice little nib here. These little clippers here, which used on 3D printers and model building, are nice and sharp, and you can just clip those off and make your counters nice and neat. So speaking of nice and neat counters, the next thing that you probably want to buy, and you know, there are 2 schools of thought, and they're really divided on that, which really is kind of funny to me, but that's okay. You know, everybody has certain ways that they like to do stuff, but I like to clip the corners. So I get a counter clipper. Now some people say you want 2 or 3 different kinds. This is the only one that I've purchased. I think it's a 2mm or 2.5mm one, and it's their deluxe model. They have one that's a little bit lower than this, which is all metal, and it doesn't tend to break. Now there have been people, if you go online, the handles break off on these plastic ones. But one guy gave an excellent tip online, is that you take a 19mm, I think this is, die, and you put it right here, and I just have it taped down with double-sided tape, and that prevents this from going all the way down. So it prevents from excess pressure here, but it goes down far enough to clip your counter, so that when I go to clip the counter here, it clips a nice neat corner on it, and it doesn't go too far down. Now the other advantage for me is I have dogs that have big ears, and they hated the squeak when this thing goes all the way down. And this prevented that from happening. So this was like the greatest idea, and it was nice and simple. And I've cut out thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces. If you watch the channel, you see that all of my pieces are clipped. You know, some games have 2,000 pieces to clip, and I do that while I'm watching TV. Now, people who are against clipping say that, you know, you're wasting your time, you could be playing the game. Absolutely true, you could be playing the game. I just do this while I'm watching TV or sitting down, or, you know, something that I don't have to pay 100% to. Most of the time that's TV. And I just clip while I'm doing that. And I have a very understanding wife that allows me to get away with that. And now my dogs don't mind it so much since I've added this to it. So a clipper is probably one of the things that if you like nice, neat counters, one of the things that you're going to probably get next. Now, the other thing you want to get is organization. Now, for your counters, most games have baggies, and it's perfectly fine to put your stuff in baggies, separate them. Some people even have, you go online on different sites and people will have tags made up for different games. And so you could download them and just make labels and put them on the bags for what they are. Or you can make up your own labels relatively easy. And this is a great way of storing your counters. Now, a step above that would be, oh, let me get the counter clippings off here, would be to get these here. And these are trays that hold your counters. GMT has them, a couple other companies do. You can get them off Amazon. But you get these and you can store all of your counters in them. And so it's a nice way to store your counters. So most people will buy like a set of 20 of these and have it as, you know, they get new games and stuff, and you just separate them out. You can also label above here if you want what the pieces are. I just put them inside here and don't really worry about it. So here's a good example of them in a tray right here, and you can see that I just have them organized by the country and the units, and then all of the playing pieces down here. Now some of these work out perfectly where when you have enough pieces that you can put them all in one tray and they fit inside the box, just outstanding. So it's really the cheapest and quickest way to organize them. There's another way that I'll talk about in a minute about organizing, which I tend to go a little crazy on. Well, I'm on the subject, I'll talk about it now. Is I like to make trays with my 3D printer. Now, you don't need a 3D printer. Don't even think you need a 3D printer. You do not. But this is the type of silly stuff that I do with it. And so I'll organize all my pieces like this so that I have nice trays for everything. And you can see that I have lids that go inside, and this one has the dice here. So I tend to overkill my organization, but you could do that. I'm not saying you have to. So not a thing that you absolutely need when you first get in, but something that you know, you may want to consider later on. So we've talked about counter clippers and things like that. Now the next thing you're probably looking for is a way to roll your dice. Now your dice come in the games, and all you gotta do is just roll them on the table. I find that to work out okay, but sometimes you get a little carried away, or you just toss them a little bit. They hit the pieces, knock the pieces all over the place, or you know, they can fly off the table and you got to go pick them up and stuff like that. So one of the things that I've myself purchased, well not purchased, actually made, is a dice tray, or a dice tower, which you drop the dice, comes down into the tray, and there you have it. You have your die rolls right there. The other thing that you can do is you can use a small cup and just throw the dice down and then read it like that. So a lot of people use cups and throw their dice down. So you just put it in there, throw your hand over it with it, and then you release your hand so that you prevent it from popping off. Okay, so the dice are important for game playing. And another device that you can get, or another thing you can get, is when you have line of sight. So a lot of games have line of sight in them where you're measuring from the center of the hex to the other center of the hex to see how that works. So see if the line of sight is blocked by a building or trees or something that's in between, some type of landscape. So one of the things that you can get is this right here, which is a little laser pointer. And this, you press the button and it has a nice straight laser line that you can put across the map. And I find that it works pretty good. And it's pretty impressive when you throw one out and and you're in the middle of a game and you start doing that. And it's pretty accurate, but the line is rather wide. And the further away you get from the game, the wider the line gets. As you get closer, it's a little bit smaller, but it's still probably, I would say, 3/32, maybe close to an 1/8 inch line. something I found that was a little bit cheaper, and this is one of the things that one of the players that I played against pulled out and used. And this is just a key ring, a retractable key ring. And, you know, if you ever had a janitor in your life, you've seen them have one of these. But the nice thing about this is that you can pull it out and you have a nice straight line that you can go across your map and find out if you have line of sight obstruction. So this is the good tool, I think. Better than this, you have to rely on batteries. If the batteries go out, or you know it's in your pocket and the laser's pressed for any length of time, the battery is going to get worn out. This doesn't wear out so easy, and this one lasts quite a bit. So I kind of favor this a little bit over the laser pointer. But either one, you don't need these that often. But if you really get into gaming, you're playing a lot, you know this is going to make life a little easier for you. So I think other than that, the only other thing that I could say that you would need getting into gaming, if you start getting a lot of these boxes, and they're bookcase boxes, so obviously you're going to need some type of bookcases. And IKEA has some nice cheap ones. You know, you can make bookcases yourself. You can use bookcases that you have, but you find that you fill up the shelves rather quickly with these games. But the main thing about the game is that you don't really need any of this stuff. You just need the desire to play the game and enjoy, you know, the tactics and the strategy and thinking of the games. And you really need to enjoy reading too. Maybe a nice reading desk is another thing that I'd recommend, or someplace where you can sit down and read all of your instructions and rules, because you will be reading a lot of rules. In this hobby, you do have to read, which is part of the enjoyment. And the nice thing about it too is that you learn about history. But I think that pretty much covers everything that I can think of that I needed, and that I got when I got into the game. Again, like I said, a lot of this stuff is not necessary. The dice tower is not necessary. A cup will work perfectly fine. 3D printer is definitely not necessarily unless you're you know, crazy like I am. Yeah, I think probably the first thing is just a pair of tweezers, the game, have at it. And then after that, start building the other stuff that you may need, like I've outlined here. Hopefully this helped for you beginners out there. And, you know, if you like what I'm doing, please do subscribe. And I hope to see you around in the next video. Thanks for watching this one.